You wake up tomorrow and your morning coffee costs not $4, but 40. Or perhaps you walk into the grocery store and the price of a simple loaf of bread has inexplicably doubled since you bought it yesterday. Sound like a bad dream? What if your entire life savings, painstakingly accumulated for years, lost half its value by lunchtime? What if you needed a wheelbarrow full of cash, literally, just to buy a few groceries? These are not scenes from a dystopian novel. They are snapshots from real history. They are the terrifying realities faced by millions of people when their nation's currency became little more than elegantly printed paper. From the streets of Weimar Germany to the marketplaces of modern day Venezuela, the lessons of runaway inflation are etched deep into the economic fabric of the world. They are more relevant today than perhaps ever before. This brings us to a fundamental question, one that might seem almost too simple to ask. If poverty is fundamentally about a lack of money, why don't governments just print more? Why not flood the economy with cash, ensuring everyone has enough to eat and enough to live comfortably? Wouldn't that solve everything? It feels like such an obvious solution, does it not? Yet, as history vividly demonstrates, it is a path that leads not to prosperity, but to widespread economic devastation and profound human suffering. Let's bring this abstract concept of inflation down to earth. For many of us, the word inflation used to be something whispered by financial pundits. It was a dry academic term discussed in economics textbooks. But in the last few years, it has become a very real, very tangible pressure point in our daily lives. Think back to the last time you filled up your gas tank. Remember the days when it might have cost you $30 or $40? Now for many, it is closer to $60, $70, or even $80 just to get around. How about your weekly grocery run? That cart that used to cost you $100 now magically rings up at $140 or $150. You are buying the exact same items, maybe even less, but your hard-earned money just does not stretch as far anymore. That package of bacon that used to be plentiful now seems to have fewer slices. The bag of chips feels a little lighter. This is not your imagination playing tricks on you. This is inflation at work. We have all experienced it, have we not? The sudden, sometimes jarring realization that the purchasing power of our money is steadily eroding. Post pandemic, global economies saw several factors converge. These pushed prices upward at a pace many had not witnessed in decades. Global supply chains, already strained by years of lean production and just in time inventories, buckled under the sudden surge in demand as the world reopened. Factories could not produce fast enough. Shipping containers were stuck in ports. The cost of moving goods skyrocketed. Then came geopolitical shocks, like the conflict in Eastern Europe. This sent energy prices soaring, adding fuel to an already burning fire of rising costs across industries. Central banks cushioned economies during the pandemic. They injected massive amounts of money into financial systems through quantitative easing and stimulus packages. These actions further added to the complex cocktail of inflationary pressures. It is a situation that has ripple effects across every aspect of our lives. Retirees on fixed incomes find their savings diminishing in real value. Young families struggle to afford their first home as interest rates climb and construction costs swell. Businesses grapple with higher expenses for raw materials and labor. They are often forced to pass those costs on to consumers. It creates a feeling of unease, a constant treadmill where you are running faster just to stay in the same place. At its core, inflation is not simply about prices going up. That is a symptom. The disease itself is the erosion of purchasing power. It means that the dollar, the pound, the euro, the yen in your pocket today buys less than it did yesterday. It is a silent tax, quietly diminishing the value of your labor, your savings, and your future plans. You might still have the same number on your paycheck, but what that number can get you has shrunk. So, this video is not just about the current economic headlines, as important as these are. It is about diving deep into the fundamental mechanics of what causes this erosion, this insidious decline in value. We are going to pull back the curtain on one of the most tempting, yet ultimately destructive economic policies a nation can pursue. The idea that you can solve your problems or escape poverty by simply printing more money. We will explore why this seemingly straightforward solution leads to utterly devastating consequences. We will use real world historical examples that are both shocking and incredibly instructive. To truly grasp the insidious nature of uncontrolled inflation, we first need to strip away the complexities of global finance. We must return to the very bedrock of economics, the fundamental laws of supply and demand. This is not rocket science, it is simply how the world works. At its core, the price of anything, a loaf of bread, a car, a house, or even an hour of labor, is determined by how much of it is available versus how much people want it. When something is scarce and demand is high, its price naturally rises. Conversely, when something is abundant and demand is low, its price tends to fall. Imagine a small, isolated village. In this village, there are 5 people. By some coincidence, there are exactly 5 loaves of bread baked fresh each morning. Each person in the village has $5 in their pocket. In this balanced market, it makes perfect sense that each loaf of bread would sell for $5. Everyone who wants a loaf can buy one, and the bakers sell all their bread. Life is simple. The economy is stable. The money in each person's pocket accurately reflects the value of the goods available to them. Now let's introduce the seemingly benevolent hand of the government, armed with a printing press. Let us say the village government, seeing that everyone only has $5, decides that $5 is not enough. Perhaps they believe people deserve more, or maybe they need to pay for a new village well and do not want to tax anyone. So the government fires up its printing press and gives every single person in the village an additional $5. Poof! Just like that, everyone now has $10 in their pocket. The total money supply in the village has effectively doubled from $25 to $50. This sounds wonderful, does it not? Everyone is richer. There is more money flowing around. But here is the crucial, often overlooked detail. The number of loaves of bread in the village has not changed. There are still only 5 loaves of bread baked each morning. The bakers cannot instantly double their production overnight just because everyone suddenly has more money. They still need the same amount of flour, the same oven, the same time and effort. The real physical goods available in the economy are exactly the same as they were before. So, what happens next? The 5 people, feeling flush with their new $10, still want their daily loaf of bread. But now they have more money to spend. What do you think the bakers will do? They see that everyone has more cash and everyone still wants bread. Since there is no more bread to go around, the bakers realize they can charge more for their product. They raise the price of a loaf of bread, perhaps from $5 to $8, and then quickly to $10. After all, if people have $10 and they desperately want bread, they will pay $10. The people with their $10 still buy 1 loaf of bread just as they did before. But now their $10 buys them exactly the same amount of bread as their original $5 did. Their money supply doubled, but their purchasing power, what their money could actually get them, remained stagnant or even declined. This, in a nutshell, is the essence of inflation caused by simply printing more money. The additional money in circulation is chasing the same amount of goods, driving prices upward. It creates the illusion of wealth, but no real value has been added to the economy. It is like pouring more water into a glass that is already full. It just overflows. This is not where it stops, though. The ripple effect begins, turning into a vicious cycle. The bakers now have more money, so they can pay more for flour. The flour mills, seeing the increased demand and the bakers' increased cash reserves, raise the price of flour. The farmers who supply the wheat to the flour mills then demand more for their crop, and the suppliers of fertilizer to the farmers raise their prices. This domino effect does not stop at bread, it spreads across the entire economy. The blacksmith needs more for his tools, the tailor for his clothes, the carpenter for his labor. Soon, the prices of all goods and services begin to climb. Wages might eventually rise too, but they almost always lag behind the skyrocketing prices. This leaves people feeling perpetually behind, their wallets lighter, and their standard of living plummeting. This reveals a profound truth. True wealth is not magically created by printing more money. True wealth is generated by the production of tangible goods and valuable services. Money itself is just a tool, a medium of exchange, a convenient way to represent that underlying value. It is like a ticket to a concert. If you print a million more tickets for a concert hall that only holds 100 people, you have not created more seats. You have just made each ticket practically worthless. The real value is the seat, the experience, the music, not the piece of paper that grants entry. When a government prints money without a corresponding increase in the goods and services that money can buy, it dilutes the value of every existing unit of currency. It is a cruel trick played on its own citizens, especially those who rely on fixed incomes or savings. To understand just how devastating this can be, we need to look at history. We must see it not as abstract lessons, but as human tragedies that unfolded when nations chose the path of the printing press. Let's begin with one of the most infamous examples, the Weimar Republic in Germany during the 1920s. The context was dire. Germany had just emerged from the devastating First World War, defeated and utterly exhausted. Under the punitive Treaty of Versailles, the victorious Allied powers imposed crushing war reparations. These were massive payments demanded from Germany to compensate for the war's damage. Germany's industrial base was in ruins, its economy shattered, and its government was desperate. Faced with these insurmountable debts and the need to fund basic public services and rebuild the nation, the German government made a catastrophic mistake. It resorted to the seemingly easy solution. It fired up the printing presses and began printing Deutschmarks at an unimaginable rate. The idea was to generate enough money to pay off their debts and stimulate the economy. But without a corresponding increase in real economic output, without more factories producing goods, more farms yielding crops, more services being rendered, this deluge of new money had only one effect. It diluted the value of every existing mark. The consequences were swift and brutal, spiraling into hyperinflation that defied belief. The price of a loaf of bread, which cost 250 marks in January of 1923, skyrocketed to 200 billion marks by November of the same year. Think about that for a moment. The price increased by nearly a billionfold in less than a year. Workers were paid multiple times a day because the value of their wages would literally evaporate between morning and evening. People would rush to spend their paychecks immediately. They often carried their earnings in wheelbarrows because by the next hour, that money could buy significantly less. Shops would demand payment in advance or change prices minute by minute. Families watched in horror as their life savings, meticulously accumulated over generations, became utterly worthless. Children played with stacks of banknotes as building blocks, or they were used as kindling for fires because they were literally cheaper than firewood. The middle class, the backbone of any stable society, was utterly destroyed. Their savings, pensions, and investments evaporated overnight. This economic devastation was not just numbers on a ledger, it created profound social unrest, resentment, and a deep sense of betrayal. It eroded trust in institutions and paved the way for extremist ideologies to flourish. The vacuum of despair and economic chaos created by hyperinflation was a significant factor in the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, leading to even greater horrors that would engulf the world. The Weimar experience is a chilling testament to the fact that money is only as strong as the economy and the trust that stands behind it. When that trust is broken by uncontrolled printing, the consequences can be truly cataclysmic. Fast forward several decades and across continents to Zimbabwe in the 2000s. This was another nation that fell victim to the siren song of the printing press, with equally devastating results. Following its independence, Zimbabwe, once considered the breadbasket of Africa, experienced a series of economic challenges. Key among these were radical land reforms implemented in the early 2000s. While intended to address historical injustices, these reforms disrupted the highly productive commercial farming sector, leading to a drastic decline in agricultural output. This economic contraction was compounded by widespread government corruption, mismanaged state owned enterprises, and international sanctions. Amidst the collapsing economy and dwindling tax revenues, the government, under President Robert Mugabe, repeatedly turned to its central bank to print money. This newly created cash was used to fund government expenditures, including the salaries of civil servants and military personnel. The reasoning, once again, was a desperate attempt to keep the economy afloat and meet immediate obligations. But just like in Weimar Germany, this influx of new money was not backed by an increase in real goods and services. In fact, due to the agricultural collapse, there were fewer goods available, making the problem even worse. The result was astronomical hyperinflation. By 2008, the official annual inflation rate reached an incomprehensible 89.7 sextillion percent. To put that into perspective, if something cost $1 at the beginning of the year, by the end of the year, it would cost an unimaginable number followed by 21 zeros. Imagine carrying a backpack full of cash just to buy a single cup of coffee, only to find the price had changed by the time you reached the counter. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe was forced to issue increasingly larger denominations, culminating in the $100 trillion bill. Yet, even this monstrous denomination could barely buy a few eggs or a bus ticket. People completely lost faith in their currency. Bartering returned as the primary means of exchange. Our final cautionary tale brings us to a more recent tragedy, Venezuela in the 2000s and 2010s. This is particularly poignant because Venezuela possesses the world's largest proven oil reserves. One might assume that a country so rich in natural resources would be immune to such economic woes.